My big vision for artificial intelligence, I call it AI for better basics. So in the education community, you'll go to some sort of conference and you'll see someone who's got their virtual reality Socrates, and I'm going to revolutionize education by getting all my students engaging with AI Socrates and getting this Socratic dialogue, and it's going to be so crazy. Or you'll see other people with their virtual reality goggles and they're taking their classes on a field trip to the pyramids of Giza. And that's just not what I'm about at all. I don't think we need to use new tech to do brand new things. I think we can use new technology to do the basics better. Things that we know work more often for more people.
All right, Paul, my audio problems have been fixed. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here.
I'm really excited to talk with you, Lawrence. Thanks for having me on.
Likewise. Can we start with a bit of your background and how you came to get involved with AI?
Sure. So before I got involved with artificial intelligence, I was involved in education, and I still am. So I'm a third generation teacher. My dad, his dad, we're all teachers. I've got three younger brothers. Two of them are teachers. So it's like the family business, man. I don't really think that there was any chance of me doing anything else. I did that for a number of years and I absolutely love it. As I said, I still do it. I'm still in the classroom. It's still one of the most joyful parts of my life is being in there with my young learners every day. I teach year 9 and 10 history. And then when artificial intelligence hit the scene, maybe late 2022 in the form of Chat GPT, quite quickly after an initial fear response, oh no, I was running around lighting whatever hair I had on fire. And then I go, actually, I think this could maybe solve some of the problems that we're facing in the teaching profession. And that's where my journey started, as an exploration of that specific use of AI. How can this help me save time? Because I'm always time poor. How can it help me be creative instead of getting stuck in the busy work, and have a bigger impact in my classroom rather than just sort of leaving my learners without the learning? So that's where I got my start a couple of years ago. And I'm on the journey now, and I'm really loving it. It's an exciting space, and I can't wait to get into more of those details with you today.
Well, I think AI, there's two common reactions. One is, like you said, you're using it to be more efficient to save your time. And the other one is where I was, and I'm slowly coming around, but it's kind of, I grew up, I'm not sure how old you are, but I grew up watching Terminator 2 as a young, impressionable teenager. And, AI is going to ruin humanity and take over the world. And then you hear those podcasts with people saying there's a high percentage chance that it's going to be the end of everything. So it gives it such a negative connotation that I want to bury my head in the sand and be like, no, no, no. And, but it unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on your viewpoint, it's here to stay. So for us burying our head in the sand, we're not really going to get anywhere. So I'd love to maybe start a little bit with some of the common misconceptions about AI. And I think that'll help people kind of get their head around it if they're reluctant.
Sure. So I don't know whether I'd class it as a misconception, but that whole AI is going to take over the world sort of thing. First of all, I think there are good reasons to think that it's not going to do that. But second of all, say it does. Say it does. Okay. And say that happens in 30 years or 40 years. My big encouragement to people, and I do a lot of training with teachers where I bring them on board, and believe it or not, Lawrence, that's actually a pretty common concern. A lot of people were watching those movies too. They have the same fears. My big encouragement to people is like that may or may not be true. I guess we'll find out in 4 decades or so. But right now, there are some real gains we can get for ourselves and our learners, and we don't want to let the future speculation actually sort of flow back down the stream of time and poison some of the benefits that we can have right now. So I think it's good to be skeptical of the technology. It's good to have our eyes peeled for ways that this could actually be misaligned with our values as a society and as individuals. However, I say, let's be wary of the problems, but let's embrace the possibilities with both hands. I mean, me, in my situation, that just means better learning for our students. As schools, that's our core business. So one of my big encouragements to people here would be, yes, be aware that there are some ways that this could go sideways. And that you're not a conspiracy theorist if you think that might happen. Every technology can be used in good or bad ways. I mean, it's not just a tool, but it is a tool. And I could use the same hammer to build a barn or a brothel. It's what I do with the tool that's really important. And so I think we need to be aware of the problems, but also willing to embrace the possibilities. And it's that sort of balanced approach, which will actually allow us to get the best out of the technology for ourselves, for our businesses, for people we may be teaching, and so on.
I'm so glad you said that because you're right. Having being paralyzed today for something that might happen in years to come is a very bad way to go through life, I guess. It's not the best approach. So I guess can you talk a little bit about on a practical level some of the ways, and I know you're talking primarily about your role in teaching, but I work in real estate and there's so much stuff that we do that I'm sure, and I've got friends that are using AI a lot more than me to be more efficient. And I think that's the goal for everyone, isn't it? It's trying to be more efficient with our time so we can have more time with our family.
That's exactly right. And so I want to lay this idea down as a base coat. It works in education, but I think it'll work in real estate. In fact, I know it works in a number of other areas. I recently got done training some people who were in mortgage and insurance. They were brokers in that space, and it works for them too. My big vision for artificial intelligence, I call it AI for better basics. AI for better basics. So in the education community, you'll go to some sort of conference and you'll see someone who's got their virtual reality Socrates, and I'm going to revolutionize education by getting all my students engaging with AI Socrates and getting this Socratic dialogue, and it's going to be so crazy. Or you'll see other people with their virtual reality goggles and they're taking their classes on a field trip to the pyramids of Giza. And that's just not what I'm about at all. I don't think we need to use new tech to do brand new things. I think we can use new technology to do the basics better. Things that we know work more often for more people. So in education, that looks like taking my reading that I'm going to do with my class, and I'm a year 9 teacher, I'm going to bump it down with AI in 20 seconds to be at a grade 7 reading level and a grade 5 reading level. And that means everyone in my class can now read it. That's a game changer, right? So that's not a crazy new innovation. It's just doing something that we've always done more often for more people. It's those high leverage tasks, and every profession will have them. You'll know more about what that is when it comes to real estate. I recently bought and sold a house, and one of the things that the real estate agent did that was fantastic for me was just keeping in constant touch. So there were emails, there were some text messages, and if he was generating it with AI in 10 seconds rather than taking 2 minutes to type it himself, you can see where the efficiencies would start to add up. And then that leaves you with two possibilities, really. One is you can do exactly the same amount of work in less time. So if you're the sort of person, there are many, many teachers out there, for example, and what they desperately need is some time off. They're using their evenings, weekends, holidays, they're cooking their goose, and they're about to leave the profession. We don't want that. So you can do the same work in less time, or you can use the same amount of time to do more work. And in a competitive space, that's actually a pretty attractive option to other people too. So I could do more of those high leverage inputs. I could keep in touch with people more. I could have better access to the data that I've got in my CRM, all this sort of stuff. I could actually do much, much more with the same amount of time. And there's going to be a certain species of person that's going to find that more exciting than the idea of just drinking more umbrella drinks on the beach after work.
No, totally. And so I guess with you, how did you become so competent at it? Back a few years ago when it was it GPT-3? Was it number 3? But did you just play with it a lot, or was there resources you used, or how did you incorporate it officially into your world?
That's a great question, because there's a lot of people out there who are hesitant of the technology. One of the best ways, Lawrence, that people can overcome that hesitancy is just roll up the sleeves and have a go. That's my big encouragement. There's an old saying that you can't learn to ride a bike at a seminar, right? Yeah. There's some things you can just only learn by doing. And I'd actually say that AI is one of those things. I've been a part of training sessions where we get 4, 5, 6 hours of lecturing on artificial intelligence and the future of knowledge and the philosophy of understanding and all this sort of stuff. And it's fine. There's a space for that. But actually, just opening up your laptop, going to chatgpt.com, starting to talk with a machine, that will give you more than hours and hours of lectures could. It absolutely will. So I've got a little framework I like to use with the people I train. I call it the 1, 2, 3 approach. So you pick one tool. So I would say choose ChatGPT. Google have their own AI. Meta have their own AI. So that's your Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, all those sorts of things. As an interesting parenthetical comment, you could have updated no apps on your phone in the last little while. So you could have downloaded no new apps And all of a sudden, whereas you would have had zero access to AI, with all the same apps 12 months on, so in our present day, you will have 4 or 5 access points to artificial intelligence on your phone. You go into WhatsApp, you go into Facebook, you go into Instagram, you go into any number of places, and there will be AI hiding somewhere. In fact, it's not even hiding anymore. It's just forcing itself on you. So we're going to do the 1, 2, 3 approach if we're looking to get our sea legs with AI. One, pick one place to use the AI. I would say Chat GPT. Other people say there are other models in the ascendancy. I just think it's the bog standard. It'll get you where you need to go. Choose 2 things to do. So for me, I chose to do create a quiz out of a reading that I had with my class. So here's the reading, create a quiz. I used to spend ages making those. And then also adjust the level of the readability of the text like we talked about earlier. So we choose one platform, we choose to do 2 things, and then we iterate 3 times. Iterate is just going back and forth. It's like you're talking with someone. You go, oh, that's too long. Please make it shorter. Or that's too complex in the vocabulary. Please make it simpler. Or these sorts of things. Iteration is just massaging the output. So it is more like the sort of thing that you would actually use in your life, not a generic output from a machine. So if you can do that 1, 2, 3, if you just pick one place, 2 things, and iterate it 3 times, then you'll be in the fast lane. You know, you will have done just about everything you need to do, and you'll be able to carry that knowledge and those skills through into the future. No worries at all.
Yeah, I really think it's one of those things where you've alone have convinced me. I have to. I've got this natural resistance to it, and I know I'm not the only one, and a lot of my friends feel the same way. And you just have to jump in and start using it. And there's something I've noticed, especially with fairly successful people, when you get to a certain age, you do become very reticent to try new things. You become very stuck in your ways. And I've always prized myself with being a very open person. I'm always curious, but I've noticed those same tendencies in me. So it's one of those things where you naturally resist those new technologies from anywhere from late 30s to late 40s, that kind of period in life. We do tend to get very stuck in our ways. But it reminds me, Paul, just listening to you talk, it reminded me of this when my brother was very against Amazon. He's like, this is just, I love getting real books and I want to go to the store and I want to buy them. And, a few years later, it's like, oh, Amazon's amazing. So these things just take a bit of time. They're in the air. More and more people start using it. So for you to delay learning is just delaying the opportunities that you can get to make your life more efficient.
That's right. That's right. And I think once you actually use the tech, you realize that you're not made out of glass. It's not going to break you. Actually, it's just another piece of technology that you might want to use as part of your routine, whether it's your personal life, your professional life. And my big encouragement here would be really good technology like this. It forces us to think about what we're about as individuals. Because I think the wrong road to go down is saying, oh, there's this new technology. I'm going to figure out a way to use it in my business. Because that's starting with a tech. All right. And we actually don't want to start with the practice of the tech. We want to start with the purpose. All right. Who am I? What am I trying to do in the world? What's the big impact I'm trying to have in my profession or my space? We start with a purpose and then we say, well, given that that's what I'm about, is there a way that this technology can help me? The simple phrase is that purpose precedes practice. It absolutely has to. Because if you do it the other way around, oh, great, there are smartwatches. I'm going to get one and then I'm going to try and figure out all the ways that I could use it maybe. No, start with your purpose. And then if you see alignment, go for it. Leap in with both feet. If you don't see alignment, don't worry about it. Don't need to get shiny object syndrome. Don't need to get fear of missing out just because someone else is using it. If it's not going to serve you and what you're about, then you can just put it in the bin. But if it is going to serve you, if it is going to help you make that impact that you desperately want to make on the world, then go for it. There's no good reason to not. That would be my encouragement.
A lot of these people, Paul, that talk about productivity and this, they say, don't try to get, inbox to zero because then the emails will keep coming in and you're going to waste your whole, the best years of your life. You're going to miss your family growing up because you're always trying to be more efficient. Do you have some thoughts on just generally balancing, because I know you're a dad, balancing family life and technology with, aspiring to be successful in your career? So I think that's something that so many people today are really struggling with.
That's a good point. People are struggling with it. I have struggled with it in the past. I struggle with it periodically because there are just so many competing concerns, and you're just trying to squeeze the juice out of this same 24 hours that everyone else gets. So yeah, for context, I've got a 3.5-year-old, a 2-year-old, and a 9-month-old. I teach full time, and I have a tech startup, which has a consultancy component as well. So there's a bit on the plate. And I think there are just ways that you can go about doing these sorts of things, which make it less stressful. So I actually do get to inbox zero every single day as a priority, because one of the things that helps me do is shut the brain off. All right. You have to take care of your brain. Now, if you're the sort of person who gets stressed getting to inbox zero and all that sort of stuff, don't do it. Like, you have to know yourself. What works for you? What works for me is not sitting there with 15 emails that may or may not need something from me, that might be critical to my business, and I'm trying to get to sleep. See, that just does not work for me at all. So I just clear it every single day. In terms of general productivity, I think there's a few really important parts to get right. For me, the mornings is absolutely crucial. I don't know how you go about this. I'd love to hear your sort of, if you've got a morning routine, but I've got 4 parts. If I get these 4 things right in the morning, I will have a fantastic day, right? And I'll be more present with my boys. I'll be more loving to my wife. I'll be better with my students. I will be better with my business, more creative ideas. But if I can, the 4 things that I have to get done every single morning, the first one is devotion. So I'm a Christian, so I read the Bible and pray in the morning. Number 2 is motion. So I work out. Devotion, motion, preparation. I get some food ready for the boys, and I get a few things ready for work, and caffeination. If I can get through devotion, motion, preparation, and caffeination in the morning, I know I'm going to be able to punch through brick walls for the rest of the day. It's great. So there are little things when it comes to productivity, which are actually, they have nothing to do with technology. They have everything to do with the person that I'm bringing to engage with the technology. And if I can make sure I'm bringing a good person to engage well with these tools, then that gives me the best opportunity for success with the time pressures that we're all under.
Cool. I'm so glad you shared that. That was really beautiful. And I think it reminds me of when people are unhappy and they think that if they make money will cure their happiness problems. But I always say that money is just an amplifier. If you're poor and miserable, you're going to be wealthy and miserable. And if you're poor and happy, you're going to be wealthy and happy. And I think it's you have the same analogy with technology. I think that's such a good point. Focus on being the person you want to be, who's going to be engaging with the technology or engaging with your finances. And I think too many people don't. They kind of miss that. I think that's really, really powerful. And also, I love the fact that you've been an entrepreneur with this, and you have your startup. One thing I really want to teach this, one lesson I really want to teach my son who's turning 4 is I want to give him the gift of entrepreneurship. So I think it's been the best thing that happened to me when I was 24, I became an entrepreneur, and I've had ups and downs, but I just think it's a wonderful way to live life. Can you talk a little bit about, do you think you have that entrepreneurial spirit in you from before, or you were this family of educators and you've kind of had to, you always see an opportunity and you're trying to run with it, and that's kind of been your entrepreneurial journey?
So I think there's always been an entrepreneurial streak, although it's never really strayed off into a financial space. So I've always been someone who's loved to start things, start groups, start churches, start organizations with other people, these sorts of things, often not for profits. And that's been really good, because for the first sort of between my 20s and 30s, you just get this impression that, I can do things. That if I have an idea in my head, I can take it through the process so that actually that idea will transform into something in the real world that other people know and like. And that's a powerful idea. If you're certain that the ideas you have value and that they can benefit other people, and you can bring them from just a seed into maturity so that they are benefiting other people, that's some of the best knowledge you can have, because it works everywhere. It's just called self-efficacy. Like, can I actually change things out there for the better? In teaching, teacher efficacy and even sort of collective self-efficacy is the number 1 highest rated sort of evidence-based, like lever-moving phenomenon. If everyone believes that they can change their school and their learners and improve in their own practice, then that's the biggest thing going for you. And so whether or not you want to call that entrepreneurship, or just like a bit of belief that you can actually affect the nature of your community and your situation, that's absolutely vital. And I was also blessed to have a dad who was always doing that sort of stuff as well. Again, he's he was a teacher and a principal his whole career. He's still working in education. But within that, he was part of starting new schools and part of implementing new programs and part of getting government funding. So it wasn't like starting a business and taking it to the moon, but it was looking around saying, hey, what do I think could be improved? And there's also, I think there's a religious aspect to it. When you go, it's doing for other people. Entrepreneurship is doing for other people what you would sort of want them to do. It's looking around and if you say, hey, man, I wish someone would fix this thing over here, or this part of our system is not working so well. You go, well, why don't I do that for someone else? Why don't I do for those people what I actually wish they would do for me? So there's that sort of, I guess, a philosophical or an ethical component as well, where entrepreneurship, and you might have a different take on this, Lawrence. You're more experienced in this space than I am, but it's solving problems. It's solving problems in a way that works for other people. It's making other people's lives better. And so, of course, that's like you have for your son. That's something I want my sons to be able to do too. I want them to see the world, to see it with eyes full of optimism, but also see it as a set of problems that can be solved and a set of other lives that can be improved.
I love that. I couldn't agree more. I think entrepreneurship is trying to be efficient and solve problems. And like Steve Jobs said, it's a lot of time people don't even know that they have the problem they have until you give them an iPod with 1,000 songs on there, and suddenly they realize that having these books of CDs in the car is not the most efficient thing. So I really, really love that. We don't have too much more time, Paul, but I want to ask you, because our mutual friend, shout out to Daniel C. He's written a lot of books on, and he talks a lot about the dangers of technology and what it's doing to children's brains. And I know you got 3 young kids, and I have a young son. And I see the pull. Like before I was a parent, I was much more judgy on parents that would give screens to their kids. And now I definitely understand there's times where and I only have one, so I can only imagine the 3, but there's times where you're losing your mind and you do have to get something done, and the temptation is always there. But then when I see him with a screen, it's like crack for his little brain. I mean, he's just so focused and engrossed in it. And I think that can't be good for him. So we try and keep it for real, emergencies and make it kind of educational learning. But can you talk a little bit about maybe some of your thoughts with kids and technology, and even us as adults? If we spend too much time with technology, it interferes with our own, powers of concentration and things like that.
I've done a lot of thinking about this, and Daniel C. is a mentor of mine. I really value his contribution. He has been sort of paradigm shifting for me in this space, Lawrence. Here's what I would say. I fell into a space, and it's all relative, and this is a judgment-free zone. Everyone's got what works for their family, and that's fine. I'll tell you what worked for my family. I was giving my boys about an hour of TV in the afternoon. I was seeing some tantrums. I was seeing some tempers flaring, some lack of patience. My big hope for my boys is not what they do, but it's the sort of person they become. And so when I see actually that starting to deteriorate, like that's starting to come apart in my hands, I reevaluate things. We've recently said, actually, boys, you get to watch TV for 1 hour on a Friday night. So you get 1 hour a week. And it was tough for the first day or two. I mean, look, it is what they're pretty young. So actually it's fine. Everything's tough for them. So I don't feel too bad about it. But it was tough, and then it's fine. Like that's part of the routine now, and that's what we do. We watch TV on Friday nights. It's also important the type of TV that you watch. So I don't know. I love old stuff. I love stuff like I was born in 1991, right? So I love stuff even from before I was alive. I just have a nostalgia for things that I just never actually took part in. I don't know why that is. But you'll find that a lot of the modern TV shows, it's just like fireworks going off constantly. Everything is exploding all over the screen. There's 5 or 6 different camera angles every couple of seconds. And it's just it's an assault on the senses. So what I did, we watch almost exclusively older stuff. So we watch Sesame Street from the 80s. And you will watch that, Lawrence, and you'll think, man, that is slow as a wet week, because it's just like there'll be a single shot of one dude walking across the screen for 5 seconds, and you're starting to get ants in your pants going, come on, man, look, let's change it up. But that's great because it's actually not stimulating them as much. Same, we watch Thunderbirds. I don't know if you remember Thunderbirds. It's with the puppets and the stories about space. The boys love that. But again, you've got this, like you got Thunderbirds 3 creeping across the screen at 3 kilometers an hour for 45-second shot. And you go, oh, there's some classical music in the background. It's very, very different from when the boys are watching Spider-Man or, it's like, boom, 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 and there's stuff going on all over the place. So I think we've dialed down the quantity, we've sort of changed the quality, and then the third piece is the modeling. There's a great story out there I watched recently on a guy on YouTube, and he basically said he didn't want his kids to become iPad kids. You're not on a screen every spare 2 minutes. He told his kid off for trying to do that. Then he whips out his phone, goes through his Instagram feed. He realized he's the iPad kid. And so I'm just trying pretty hard to make sure that we are modeling good behaviors, my wife and I. And that's tough. My wife and I have weekly conversations about our screen time, and we look at each other's phones as well and say, hey, look, I probably hit it a little hard today. These sorts of things. It's an ongoing process. But I think if you can look at the quality, if you can look at the quantity, and if you can also look at the modeling, those three things will really set your child up for having a healthy relationship with technology that's dictated to them by you, not by whichever company wants to secure more of their eyeballs for longer.
Well, I'm so glad you said that about my son was watching Sesame Street too. It's really good to calm him down before he sleeps. And you're so right. The pace of the action in all the things, it seems so slow and pedestrian compared to today, when you're right, your senses just getting assaulted by all these different things. And then as soon as you think that becomes the norm, everything else seems slow. And that's when you hear about, I think Jonathan Haidt wrote that book, The Anxious Generation, where he was talking about kids now. They can't sit through a movie because it's way too slow. They need way, much more constant stimulation. And it just can't be good for our brains. And the other thing you said about modeling, I think, is so fascinating, because in order for us to be the best parents, we have to be our best self. And it's incredibly difficult, but it's incredibly rewarding. And I think ultimately that's the thing to shoot for. So I absolutely love that. Paul, we're going to have to do part 2 because you're such a fascinating guy. But is there anything that I missed that you wanted to touch before we wrap this up?
Yeah, I think in the future, in our next conversation, it would be fascinating to look at sort of the things that we can do for ourselves that allow us to use the technology better, but are not technological. And so we talked a little bit about that when we talked about sort of what we're doing in the morning, or what we're doing for our mind. That's a whole nother area that we could talk about, sort of beliefs and attitudes and ways of thinking about yourself and talking to yourself that will actually get the best out of technology, but are not themselves technological things. There may be psychological issues that can sort of manifest in technological problems. So I think there's a whole raft of things we could double click on there in the future.
I absolutely love that. Thank you so much, Paul. I'll put a link to your website, paulmathews.ai. And I really appreciate you taking the time. I know you've got to run, but we'll do part 2 soon. And before then, I'm gonna play around with Chat GPT a bunch. So I'm gonna have a lot more feedback for you for that.
I'm looking forward to hear how you go. I really am. So you just remember, sit loose in the saddle, have a good sense of humor, and I think you'll absolutely love what you find.
Oh, I appreciate you, Paul.